So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to our seminar, the second during this week and the last for this academic year. I'm very happy. I introduce Professor Philippe Lacour. He's an expert in translation technology, and he will show us today his project TraduXio, this platform of collaborative translation. Let me tell you just two words about Professor Lacour. He was trained in France and different countries in Europe, and now he's adjunct professor at the philosophy department of the University of Brasilia. He teaches theoretical and general philosophy, epistemology, philosophy of science, and methodology. And his research focuses in particular on the epistemology of social and human sciences, including their normative aspects and also the technology of translation, which interests all of us. And he is also program director at the Collège International de Philosophie in Paris, investigating the notion of clinical knowledge. Professor Lacour, thank you very, very much for being with us this evening, this Friday evening. It's a pleasure and an honor. And you have the floor now.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm very pleased to be here tonight. I hope that everyone can hear me. Thank you all the more for being present, since I know that there are many other things to do on a Friday night, especially at this time of year. Thank you very much for your attention. So tonight I'm going to present you my project, TraduXio. Basically, my presentation will have two parts. The first one will be a theoretical one. I will present basically the idea. And the second part, after a short break, will be a kind of workshop so that you can play around on the platform to basically test it quite as an introduction. Basically, it's not very difficult, but it needs a few explanations, and I'm sure that you will be able to manage your way later on after that presentation. So I'm going to ask Chichika to launch my presentation, because I can't do it myself because of I don't have the PowerPoint software. So I guess everyone can see it now. Okay, so next please, Chichika. I'm going to present all those parts, all those aspects. After a brief introduction, I'll show how TraduXio is used in by different disciplines or different group of interests. In conclusion, I will show what lays ahead for the future of TraduXio in terms of web development. So next, please. And next. Thank you. So this is the homepage of the second version. TraduXio had a first version, and we basically dropped it in the year 2014 because we had built a second version that is more rapid and robust. And you can see immediately all the characteristics of the software. It's basically meant to analyze and compare, to work together, and to browse for suggestions. So this is the homepage in French, but the software is localized. Obviously, you won't have it in Greek because we didn't do it. We haven't done it yet, but we did the localization in English, and in a few other languages like Portuguese and Arabic, I guess. So normally, if you put your browser on the English language, you will be able to use the interface in English, for those of you who don't speak French or may not be comfortable with it. So next, please. Thank you. I will begin shortly with this brief presentation of basically the philosophy of TraduXio. I won't get into details too heavily because tonight's focus is more on the workshop and the practical aspects, but still it's good to understand what is at stake as far as the idea is concerned. So I believe all of you, or most of you, are familiar with the translation technologies and CAT tools. So if I lay aside the two extreme possibilities of translation, that would be automatic translation and human translation, what interests us are the two intermediary possibilities. The first one is human-assisted machine translation, and the second one would be computer-assisted human translation. So one of the best tools of the human-assisted machine translation was Google Toolkit. Now it's been abandoned, so we could speak of software that are based on machine translation and offers you possibilities for post-edition, like DeepL, for instance, so that kind of stuff. Of course, you may be familiar with. And computer-assisted human translation are all the CAT tools that are basically focusing more on the very gestures of the human translators and additioning machine device in order to assist the human translators. What I'm going to show tonight is that TraduXio is not just another CAT tool. It's a very specific CAT tool because it doesn't use the same presuppositions as most of the other CAT tools. I'll explain. But basically, in the philosophy of translation, it's on the third side of this board, so to speak. Next, please. So it's easier maybe to begin defining TraduXio with what it's not. And it's not another device for automatic translation or semi-automatic translation. Why is that? Basically the image I've just shown you, all what's on the left of it is on the side of basically semi-automatic or automatic translation is based on the postulates of natural language processing. We're speaking here of 99.99% of language technologies today. So it's not the majority, it's just huge, and it presents itself as most of the time as the only possibility when one talks about language technology. I will show that there's another possibility which basically TraduXio is going to explore. But what TraduXio is not is basically natural language processing. So what are the postulates of natural language processing? Basically, they were invented at the moment that the great programs, the first great translation programs were created after World War II between Russian and English. And these were designed by engineers and not translators. So the idea is that what makes sense in the language is the sentence as the basic semantic unit, okay? And a text is a composition of sentences. Second postulate is translation consists in sending a message from language A to language B. So you work with language pairs, okay? And the third postulate is that you focus on linguistic rules. This is what should be important in the language. There are grammatical rules, there are statistical rules, and you have a combination of both, okay? So grammatical rule would be the first sistran. Statistical rule, you've recognized Google Translate, and a combination of both. You have basically the current sistran, for instance. Next, please. So this is what TraduXio is not, and now what TraduXio does promote is an interpretive conception of language, okay, as opposed to a conception based on natural language processing. And the postulates are different, symmetrically, okay? So we consider that texts are the real complex semantic units, texts and not languages, okay? To consider that texts and not sentences. When you consider that sentences are the basic semantic unit, it's basically a simplification, an engineer simplification of the vision of the way language works. Okay, this was a simplification of the 40s, but most translators know that they translate texts and not a bunch of sentences, something like that. So immediately when you deal with texts, you deal with complexity. Okay, you can't hide behind the simplicity of the sentence, pretending to deal with the complex, sophisticated aspects later. This is what most CAT tools will do. So second postulate that we actually underline is that translation consists in translating one text in one language into other texts in as many languages as you want. And most of the time, a professional translator actually does know more than 2 languages. The idea that a translation consists in going from A to B is, again, a simplification made by engineers of the gesture, of the complex gesture of translators, okay? If you translate, I guess most of you, especially in Greece, because it's very cosmopolitan, and I know Greek intellectuals are probably the people in the world who dominate the most languages. It's quite impressive. You usually know more than 2 languages, okay? And someone that is trained in translation, in the translation industry, they normally have, like the students in Paris, in the translation schools, they have language A and language B on top of the French, of course. So it doesn't make really sense to consider that a translator does only know 2 languages when he works, okay? Your intelligence mobilize many other knowledge, even if they are from different languages. And third aspect, true enough, there are some regularities in languages, but there are also some singularities, okay? There is something irregular. There is variation in the language. So why should one disregard it just because you want to put the stress on the rules? Okay, it doesn't make a lot of sense here from the point of view of the philosophy of language. It's a bit of a bias in the way you look at language. So when we talk about singularities, it's obviously coming from the German school of hermeneutics that focused on poetry. Okay, so you're saying, okay, that's romanticism, that's very nice, but it's not, language is not all about inspired and difficult poetry. Okay, it's not about Aeschylus, for instance, all the time. You have also plain conversation. Fine, but what's behind the reflection about poetry or poems, the unicity of the poem in the German idealism, for instance? What lays behind it is basically that the language is capable of creation, okay? This is what explains the life of the language. So you have the unicity of the poem in Romanticism, but you have also all the creativity in the jokes, the insults, okay, the new words that you're coining every day because of new aspects of life being discovered, okay, things like that. So when you take a look at language from this angle, you are able to make sense of semantic innovations, historical variations. Of course, it makes a lot of sense when you deal with historical linguistics or compared linguistics. When we mean that singularities, singular aspects, variations do have an importance in language, we are not saying that there is only singular aspects in languages. So we allow for generalization. We are not obsessed exclusively with singular aspects, as if there were only poems in the French language, and you would not be able to go to, I don't know, to buy some bread because you would have to make a poem about it. No, you can generalize. You can go up in the abstraction and you're not blocked on each singular aspects of language, okay? But when you pretend to generalize, you never reach the universal level. You reach a certain abstract level that is the general level. For instance, there will exist, if you focus on Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, you can generalize to Elizabethan theater, okay, Shakespeare theater or Elizabethan theater, or English of early 17th century. But you never jump to the universal level that would be tantamount to saying, this is how you say in English, okay? This is what postulates the natural language processing when it focuses on rules. You never introduce structurally variation. When you introduce variation, then you differentiate between registers. For instance, you have commercial English, literary English, English of the 17th century, in today's English, okay, Australian English and United States English, that kind of variations, okay? You will introduce also registers like styles. This is comic, this is tragic, this is lyric, okay? And it makes a lot of sense when you're looking for suggestions to take these styles into consideration. There is, it doesn't make sense to browse for suggestions in a CAT tool when you translate poetry and get results about the vocabulary of fashion or contemporary journalism. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so you want relevant suggestions through these categories that are general categories. Okay, so this is very important. When you focus on the existence of singular aspects in language, you allow for general visions of language and not a unified universal vision. It may seem a bit abstract, but I will show you how it changes everything in terms of technology, because you don't follow natural language processing. Next, please. Titika, thank you. So, do we have any objections against the small philosophy that I just developed? You may say, fair enough, there are singularities, but does that mean that there are only singularities? I already answered this objection. No. To point at the existence of singularities doesn't mean that there does not exist regularities. It means that both are legitimate and they are not exclusive, but you have to notice that the very vast majority, and we're talking 99.99% of language technologies, are focusing on the rules and not on the singularities and the general. Okay, they're after the rules and automatic translation or semi-automatic. Another objection would be, okay, you have either automatic translation for what is useful, and you can keep human translation for what is artistic, demanding, sophisticated. Okay, this is an objection that impedes us to harness technology in order to do sophisticated translation. Okay, this is an important objection that was very important when I started TraduXio. I had to explain to engineers in computer sciences that there's another way of doing basically computer sciences for translation. And I also had to explain literary translators that it makes some sense to use the technology for literary translation. Both agreed on the fact that technology was useful, but not for literary translation. Okay, so we had here to convince both of them. You would be surprised in knowing who evolved more. It's the people from the literary translation. Because of all the penetration of technologies, they are more familiar now with what technology can do for them for difficult translation. I'm talking about literature, human sciences, philosophy, religious texts, and so on. But the people who didn't change the idea are the computer scientists. This is why I insisted on the fact that it's 99.99% of language technology that is based on postulates that we will try to avoid. Another objection would be, listen, you're pretending to translate, but basically we don't need to translate. Because we speak as Greek intellectuals, for instance, all the important languages in the world, so we don't need to translate. I heard that back in the beginning of the century, in the years 2000. Or another one would be, English is the language of globalization and we don't need to translate. Okay, those are objections against the idea that I'm trying to develop with TraduXio. Next, please, Titika. I see there are some messages on the side, but okay, I'm not going to. So basically, what is TraduXio? TraduXio is a platform, or I prefer to say a digital environment for translation. It is basically, it takes the form of an NGO that I created in 2006, and that received a bit of public funding. We're talking about UNESCO, Organisation de la Francophonie, also the French Ministry of Culture, but it's a very small budget. We've been working on a shoestring budget. We're talking about 65,000 euros over, what, 15 years? So it's basically nothing. And we are paying our web development. We are not paying ourselves as academic, but we're paying the development. It's freeware, meaning it's free to use, and it's the code is open source, and it's a very strong license. Some of you that know the open source world. It is web-based, meaning you don't have to download it, and it's based on collaboration, and it focuses on cultural texts. I won't get into details about the technology, but basically what's important is that it works with every digitized language. You know that not every language is digitized, but all of them that are on the Unicode will work with TraduXio. Next, please. So there are three originalities for TraduXio. The first one is it goes beyond the language pair idea. You translate from one language to many other ones. The second one is you will browse for relevant suggestions and not any suggestions. This is where the singularity comes in, okay? Because when you focus on the singular, you introduce general categories. So you want suggestions for poetry and not for journalism, or vice versa. And the third aspect, I will insist less, because it was quite original in when I started in 2007. You have to remember it was the boom of Wikipedia, of Facebook, of collaborative tagging, that kind of stuff. Today it's more obvious, so I will speak less of this. Next, please. So what does it mean to go beyond the language pair system? Basically, you have a series system. You start from one text in Korean literature, and you go to as many different texts in as many different languages as you want. So it gives you like a series of possibility. Okay, so the interface will not be a double interface with the first window for language A and the second window for language B. Most interface of CAT tools that you may know look like that, but TraduXio is different. Next, please. It looks like an accordion. Okay, this is what it looks like because you translate into as many different languages as you want. Okay, so we have here a text of Old Chinese translated into Korean of 16th century, Japanese of 16th century, and modern Korean. You want to introduce another column for Greek? Go ahead. Another one for Portuguese? You can do it. Another one for Hindi? Go ahead. And so on. Okay, and basically you can close and open the columns on demand. It's just you just have to I'll show you later, but basically you click on the sign that's on the upper right hand side, basically the symbol of the accordion. Next, please, Titika. You can compare different versions. Okay, you have one text in Arabic and three, for instance, 3 different versions in French. You are able to have a clear vision of the 3 versions in order to analyze and maybe not evaluate them. Okay, so you remember when I showed you on the homepage, it basically tells you everything about TraduXio because it starts with analyze and compare. This is basically a tool for comparison. We are using it here, a very old technology that translators have been using for centuries. It's basically the concordance, as I will show later. Next, please, Titika. Okay, I'm coming now to the second originality. When you use a CAT tool, you browse for suggestion because the machine is assisting your intelligence in providing suggestions. I do it myself all the time when I'm writing an essay. I go on a site for synonyms to avoid repetitions. Here, the machine attends my intelligence. It stimulates my creativity. Okay, so it's basically the same idea here. You want to have, if you translate Korean literature, poetry of the 20th century, for instance, you don't want to have results about the vocabulary of fashion. Okay, you don't want to have Korean pop. It's not what is at stake. And you don't want to have a Korean novel of the 18th century, suppose it exists. Nothing like that. Next, please. So basically, what we harness here is the very old technology of concordance. Concordance is as old as the first translation of the Bible and the Buddhist text. It means you take a text in the original version and you put into columns the different translation that you have of this text. We just make this concordance digital. So if you check the page in front of you, you will have results for quality, for instance, in various languages, okay, depending on the text base that you are mobilizing. But basically, you have results from a text from Akira Mizubayashi, you have a text from Jacques Godbout, you have a text from Charles Perrault, and so on. Okay, so you can browse for results and you can precise if you want results only from this author, or only from this language, only from that register style, for instance, if you want to focus on poetry and so on. Next, please. So suppose you have too many results, as it's now beginning to be the case on the actual TraduXio, because a lot of people are working on it and they insert text in the text space. Well, in that case, you need to use filters to reduce the number of results that you get. So you will browse for results, for instance, in the field of novel and not of politics, or in philosophy and not poetry, and so on. Next, please. So again, just to finish with this second aspect, it is only possible to use a technology through relevant suggestions if you basically, if you do not use natural language processing. Because if you use natural language processing, you will focus on rules. If you want to focus on genre, okay, literature of 16th century and so on, you back up from the universal rule to general categories. And the reason why you do so is because you recognize that there exists variation in the language. Okay, so what makes sense is the space between singular aspects like Romeo and Juliet and general aspects of language, say English of early 17th century. But there is no such thing as universal English. Okay, again, most of the technology today will focus on the rules no matter what. Okay, the idea that you can harness technology for this relevant suggestions based on general categories is not perceived. The third originality is more common to you today. We can use tools to collaborate, so I won't insist too much on this. Next, Titika. This is a chat. Next, please. It doesn't work too well on the current version. This is a forum for asynchronous communication. Next, please. This is a glossary. This works really well. When you double click on a word, those are Chinese characters, so I can't read it properly, but you see a small blue line underlining here. Thank you. The word. When you double click on this, then appears a small window asking you whether you want to browse for the concordance for this word, or if you are satisfied with the results given by the glossary. This word means aliment in French, and in Japanese there is also a fixed translation. So suppose you work with colleagues over a translation of a book of Bourdieu, for instance. One of the first things that you make sure is that everyone will translate the core concepts in the same way. So you have to harmonize the vocabulary for certain terms, hence the necessity of a glossary. Okay. Also, a glossary is very interesting when you're doing research. You work on a certain terms, for instance. So this is a very interesting aspect, and I use it all the time with my students, as I will precise later. Next, Titika. You can, by default, everything you do on TraduXio is private. It's not the case that because you're working on the web, everything's going to be visible. TraduXio belongs to the invisible web. It's not even indexed by Google or the search engines, because by default, it's protected. Now, you can decide to use TraduXio as a publishing device. It's not meant for it. It's a working place, but you can decide also to publish your work. In this case, you may switch to public, or you may want to choose custom privileges. Next, Titika. For instance, you want to allow Titika to do everything on this text. She will do the administration, but you want to allow Philippe to edit, and you want to allow someone else to read, but not to edit. You want to allow someone to see the translation, but not touch it, and so on. So you organize the various authorization within your group, which is very important when you work with students, of course. Next, please. This is the tags that you may want to introduce in your text. When you're doing a research, you can have tags that are classical, like the tags of the century. You can have tags like this is a nice text, or this is a difficult text, or this is a crucial test, that kind of stuff. All the tags are possible. This is a capture of the interface of the first version of TraduXio. Next, please. So now I'm going to switch to the presentation of how TraduXio is being used by a certain group of people around the world. So I will begin with language teachers. Next, please, Titika. This is a professor of translation working at the Korea University in Korea, and he uses TraduXio to evaluate the work of his students both inside and outside the classroom. Okay, so he focuses on comparing the ideas of his students and doing some kind of commentary about it. So he can translate from French to Korean. Next, please. Or from Korean into French. Of course, when you teach translation, you do it on both way. Next, Tichika. You can translate also into various Asian languages. He did this small thing for me starting from a Chinese text. He introduced a Korean translation, then a Japanese one, and a Vietnamese one, just also to show you that it works with every kind of digitized language. Also, when you write in Arabic, for instance, or Hebrew, it's going to work from right to left. Next, please. So another way to use TraduXio is to use it to translate social sciences or humanities. Next, please. This is what I do in Brasilia. I have a small group of people who meet in order to translate classics in Portuguese. Historically, there were far fewer translations into Portuguese than into Spanish. This is linked to the colonial history of Latin America. So there are huge needs in translation for the Portuguese language. And since I teach philosophy there, I, in general, try to translate classics of philosophy that have not been yet translated. The problem is the following, is that no one has the triple faculty, the triple capacity of knowing French philosophy, French language, and Portuguese language. For instance, I'm quite good at French philosophy and French language, but my Portuguese may be weak at times if I'm asked to translate sophisticated texts. Okay. Now, my students in philosophy, they will have a clear capacity in Portuguese language and French philosophy, maybe, but not in French. And I have also language students who are quite at ease with both languages, but know nothing of philosophy. So collaboration in that case is a necessity. You have to talk one to another in order to finalize the translation. I think it's quite representative of what is at stake when you translate human and social sciences. It's very complicated to gather in one person all the competences that you need in order to reach your goal. Next, please. So we translated a small text of Paul Valéry at first that we published, and then next, a bigger text from Bergson, also never published in Portuguese, quite important text. And we continued with Simone Weil, Cournot, we're now translating Alain, we translated Sartre also. So we are beginning to have a small corpus of French philosophy. And I value the work of my students by publishing it. A good thing of the academic Brazilian system, which is not always good, but that's one good point, is that they will consider the publication of a translation as important as the publication of an original article. So it gives you the same amount of points, so to speak, in the when they evaluate your CV. So it's very good to motivate the students. Next, please. The third use of TraduXio began with a funny encounter at the University of Porto. Next, please. They were interested in using TraduXio, but not to translate. They had already translated. So they asked me to use TraduXio, and I designed a customized website here with the name of their department is the Center for English Translation and Anglo-Portuguese Studies. Okay, they had already translated the comedies of Shakespeare, and they wanted to insert it in order to be able to browse for results in the concordance. So basically, you use it as a corpus. Okay, next, please. So this is what you get when you look for instance, when you look at the play, they inserted the play that way, so you can have a vision of the translation already being existent. Next, please. But when you want to browse for the translation, you, for instance, browse for the concordance for entreat, and you get the results depending on the plays that you have inserted in the text base. Okay. I'm speaking of text base, just a quick note here. I'm speaking of text base rather than database. This is not being snob, is because the reason we don't, because we don't use natural language processing, we don't use a database. We have basically a group of texts that we consider from different angles. So we prefer to speak of a text base. The end of the note here is just to explain, without entering into details, the technological originality. Another use of TraduXio is for international conferences. We had a small contract with the IATIS organization, Organization for Translation Studies, who asked us help in the organization of a multilingual symposium, international symposium that they wanted to have in Hong Kong. They said, okay, we want to have a symposium. We are an association of translators. We all the time we promote the importance of going multilingual, but we don't do it ourselves. So this time they wanted to have a multilingual symposium. So it was English and Chinese, and there were 300 abstracts to be translated, and we harnessed, we designed a special site for them, okay, in order to gather the texts, join people, a group of volunteer people to translate the abstracts, and in the end, they had a bilingual symposium. It was a success. I attended this symposium, and it was a huge success. Next, please. So this is what the website looked like. And then inside the website, what did you have? Next, please. A distribution of role. Okay, so you have abstract number 100, the title, the author, the language, the panel, and so on. And you had the translation status, not yet translated, translating, translation finished, in revision, or finalizing. Okay, you had 6 levels of in the translation process. Okay, so you can monitor the advancement of the whole project at a time. Next, please. Another use of for TraduXio is when you have to manage multilingual a workflow of multilingual translation. This was a need that was mentioned to us by the director of this e-journal, Sens Public. He told us, we want to have article in French and translate them into English or the opposite, but sometimes we want to translate it into Portuguese, and we want to have a Portuguese original article that we want to translate into French, and so on. If you think about it, it's basically the problem of the UN. You have a resolution that can enter the system, and it's never only through the English language. You can have a Russian resolution and you have to translate it into 4 different languages. You can have a French resolution and you have to translate it into 4 different languages. So you never have a central language at the center of the system. Okay, you have a Siri system all the time. So basically, in that case, you cannot work with language pairs. It's going to be too complicated because each additional language that you add improve the probabilities of language pairs. Okay, if you have 3 languages, you have already a certain number of possibilities. You have A with B, B with C, A with C. If you introduce language D, it gets more complicated. Language E is going to be exponential, and so on. So if you work with the flexibility of TraduXio, everything is smoother. Okay, you can receive an article in Greek, translate it into English, receive an article in Portuguese, translate it into Chinese, and print it. So you manage the multilingual workflow much better than when you deal with actually a CAT tool that works with language pairs. Okay, unless you have the algorithmic power of Facebook that is now translating in all the possible language pairs combination that you can think of. But still, Facebook is only concentrating on major languages. Okay, with TraduXio, you can work with minor languages as well. You can translate, for instance, from Finnish to I don't know, the language of the south of India, maybe. That will not be a priority for Facebook. Okay, so you can choose your you can choose the number of languages you want to work with. You can reduce this number, or you can have more languages entering. You can do it. For instance, you remember the University of Porto I mentioned that was working on Shakespeare. They're now so satisfied with TraduXio that they would like to add the Spanish translation of Shakespeare. If you worked with an aligned corpus, a bilingual one, you couldn't do it. With TraduXio, you can add another language and a 4th one if you want. It's very flexible in this respect. Next one. So in conclusion, next one. How can one use TraduXio? To teach languages to teach the translation techniques, to translate human and social sciences or literature, to build and browse customized corpora, to translate abstracts for international conferences, to organize multilingual writing for e-journals, and more. I will show you two improvements that we're working on currently for the future. They've already been designed. We could go to scholarly translation or philology. Is just a question of adding a reference to the original edition in the margin of the text. So Plato, Philebus 267e, for instance, on the right-hand side, you see the number. Maybe you can show it here, the margin, so that everybody can see it. Okay. It makes a lot of sense when you work on Shakespeare, when you work on the Critique of Pure Reason. You know, there are two versions, version A, version B, okay? Those aspects are very familiar to you if you've worked on classics, particularly. Next, please. Now, it's exactly the same technology, curiously enough, that we're going to use for subtitling. Instead of having a reference to the original edition, you have a reference to the time of the video that you are currently subtitling. So this happens a lot in computer sciences. When you think of an application, suddenly you're surprised because you discover that there are other applications that are turned possible through this development. So developing the code for a philological use of TraduXio goes in the same direction as imagining an application for collaborative subtitling of videos with the same flexible system of going beyond the language pairs. Okay, so you want to translate a Netflix series into French, for instance, and then it makes some success in Greece for some reason, and you need a Greek translation, you can add it, and so on. Okay, then the import-export system is the same. There are some devices for this kind of file, specific file for the subtitles of videos. Next, please. So if you're interested in this project, you can find some of our publications on the net. The first article is quite old, but gives you a very clear idea of our project in terms of philosophy. It was published in the Journal for Translators, Meta, and it's online. You can have access to it. It's more meant for a public of literary translators. The second one is more meant for computer scientists. It tries to convince them that not every language technology should be based on natural language processing. It's very difficult to convince these guys, believe me. It's very difficult. One aspect might be important here. I've started this project with Aurélien Benel. I haven't introduced him yet. He's a very clever professor of computer sciences. And the reason why he designed these technologies based on interpretation is because you may be interested in this point. He started his career working at the École Française d'Athènes. He helped scientists to describe qualitatively Greek vases, helping them develop their own point of view, different points of view on the same objects. It's basically exactly the same idea that we're using for TraduXio. The various translations are different points of view on the same original text. So this guy, Aurélien Benel, started his career as computer scientist with ideas from the humanities and the social sciences. It is no surprise the reason why we met, so to speak, and agreed we had the same vision. Okay. The third one, the third article you may disregard, because it's basically an exploration of legal aspects of what would be an open license for translation. As you may know, translation is considered a derivative work, and we try to imagine what could be an open license for translating, meaning you can't modify my text except for translation, something like that, in order to facilitate translation, especially in the academic world. But it's more speculative at this time. We contacted Creative Commons. They were interested, but they only help people once there is a community organized and meeting an effective need. They don't go into just mere ideas like that. The two last publications are recent ones. The first one is an article into a book that it's unfortunately is quite expensive, and it was published that I published with my colleagues René Desjardins and Claire Larsonneur. It's basically a continuation of a workshop we had at this symposium that I mentioned in Hong Kong, because we had a panel there. And it's basically the book is about the new perspectives for translation at the digital age. And I developed a vision, basically a feedback on a use that I did not mention, but this is quite similar to the use about social and human sciences. It's a project led by my colleague Daniel Henkel of University Paris 8, with two other universities, University of Berkeley in the United States and University of Florence in Italy. He gathered about 30 students and let them organize in order to translate short stories into French and Italian, and then Italian short stories into the two other languages and so on. So it was a very interesting experience, and it gives all the feedback there. The book is very expensive, so I suggest you can contact me to have like the article, this chapter, if you're interested. And the last article, you can have access, it's online. It's published in the Journal of Data Mining and Digital Humanities. And it's basically about all the different uses of TraduXio that I mentioned to you. But it's written in English, and it's published in this data mining journal, meaning we're aiming at the kind of people that are that is so difficult to convince. Basically, a journal of data mining will do natural language processing. So we're trying to convince once more the people who are doing this that it's not the only possible use of technology when it comes to translation. Okay, next please. So that's it. You have the website, and after a short break, maybe we can switch to the workshop. I'll take a look at the commentaries, but it's all in Greek, so I can't read it.
Thank you very, very much, Philippe.
I hope everything was is understandable, but I believe it would be much clearer once we enter the practice part.
For sure, it was very interesting. So if there are any problems, yes, there will be resolved with a practical seminar, the hands-on seminar. I don't think there are questions. I don't know if there are any questions now. I don't see in the chat. It's completely different things. Is there any question? Any comment? Maybe the questions will come after the hands-on seminar.
Sure.
I think.
Maybe we can. So you have to give me the possibility to share my my screen.
Of course.
You have it?
Can I stop share your presentation?
Yes, you can stop my presentation. I will take the lead now and go directly on the internet. So
perhaps you want 5 minutes just to...
It's as you wish. We can have a short break if you want.
As you wish.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
Since we have maybe, we'll need some time to register, I suggest we go ahead straight away because we will lose some time for registration. So the first thing I would like to ask you to do is to go on the TraduXio webpage, traduxio.org. Okay, and you click on Commencer or begin in English. So you normally, I'll do it again. You're not, I'm always connected by default. So you're not connected. So this is what you see. You have the image here. Can everyone see my screen now? Yes, I guess so. So you have this image here of the two Indian people talking, and you have a list of texts here. This you have access to, but you can't modify it. But take a look at it. You get the idea. So this is the Bible in ancient Greek. Okay, I know a bit of ancient Greek, not the new Greek, but enough to be able to read Apocalypsis Ioannou. Okay, you have here the Greek version, you have the Latin version, and you have King James Bible. Look how interesting that is, because the technology of the concordance started with the translation of religious texts, as you may know. Okay, and also it can be of interest because you may be able to read ancient Greek. Lucky you. I used to be able as well. Well, you can see a few things here and there. Okay, for instance, this you should be able to. Okay, so if I click on Biblion, okay, it will offer me the possibility to browse for the concordance in Biblion, and you can see that there's an entry in the glossary in the Breton language, the language from Brittany, that part of France, where there was a Celtic regional language, okay, and so on. So you have here Blepain also, you can browse in the concordance. When you look in the for results in the concordance, you can select a word like kai, but you can select also all this part of the text, okay, or even everything here. Okay, it depends what you want to do. Let us go back to the main page. What I wanted to show you is that the real interesting stuff begins once you are registered. So basically you want to connect, and you have to register if you are not yet registered. So I will suppose that I'm not yet registered. I will click on s'enregistrer, and it's going to ask you for your name, your login, okay, your email address, and your password, and you will confirm it. And once you register, you will be sent an email, and then the process is quite simple. You have to validate by going through your mailbox, and you have to validate this registration by clicking on the link. It's very common now. So I'll let you do this first, and then we'll meet on the TraduXio website on the registered space. And you will have access to something like that, depending on the text you have translated. So I'll let you do that first. I'm unable to check, Titika, whether some people have difficulties here. It sometimes happen. You have to check. Okay, your password. I suggest you take first name dot last name, all in non-capital letters.
Not the password, the login, you mean?
The login, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the password, you choose whatever you want. Sometimes there are some difficulties. TraduXio, I forgot to mention, works better if you use Chrome or Firefox. There might be some problems, small minor problems, if you use the Microsoft browser.
Δεν ξέρω αν υπάρχουν δυσκολίες και θέλετε να ζητήσετε βοήθεια. Αν μπορείτε να γραφτείτε.
For some reason, Titika, I'm unable to see whether there are some questions, so I'll let you deal with that.
Yes, of course, but I don't see any questions.
Okay, fine.
Neither problems for the moment. Maybe you can write in chat if you have some problem. Or ask.
Yeah, they can simply ask. Maybe it would be.
Yes, it would be easier.
I know there are sometimes problems, but it's easy to solve. The new Microsoft Edge is based on Chrome. I didn't know that.
I don't know if people are ready and if they are registered just to go on.
There is only the login in option.
The login option. There is no register.
I don't understand.
They can't find where to register, I think.
No register option. No, it should be easy to find. Like here. Look. You need to go to connection and then it's register. You don't have access to this here. This is quite strange. It would be quite strange.
Let's see.
If you go on the start page of TraduXio.org, you go on start or commencer in French.
Yes.
And on the top right corner, there is a connection or login. If you are not registered, you are ordered to register.
Okay, I see a message. When you click on login, register also appears.
What?
In English, I don't know.
No, if you in English?
Yes, in the English version, probably. That you must
here on register. Here, you mean? You don't have access to this?
You can switch to the English version. Maybe. So probably connection is login, and then you have to click on login. Yes.
Yes, I would have to check the English, change my browser to English.
Yes, it's maybe.
Well, it's the same procedure.
Yes,
the same steps.
It should be the same procedure. It's exactly the same.
Maybe connection is login in the English version, so you must click on login to have the option to register. That's why I say maybe it's better to see the English version.
Yes, I'm trying to get.
As most of people don't speak French.
Where do I change this? I can't remember. No, it's going to be in Firefox. Préférence. synchronisation langue.
Yes. Okay, everything works in the English version. We have a comment here. Peut-être choisir des alternatives. Ah, d'accord.
Voilà, ok, normalement c'est fait. Non, ça marche pas. Pourquoi ça marche pas?
It must be internal in the program, no? The language suite. Not from Firefox, from TraduXio.
Well, normally if the browser works in English, he will detect it and offer to do it in English. I can't modify it on TraduXio.
Okay.
It's the browser that's being detected. I'm just wondering whether it's something that I should fix within Firefox or within the Apple system. I'm not so good at it, but are there because normally you should have access here. It's login. It says login in English, and then you have register. You can click on this aspect, and it's the same procedure.
Okay, I see many comments that everything seems to work fine in English, so we can remain.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Did the lady who had the difficulty to register find the solution? Okay, I hope so. Yes, everything is okay. So we can go on.
Okay, thank you. So what we have in front of us is this. Okay, you have fewer texts, of course, because you're not allowed to see all of them. It depends on the privileges that you have been given. Okay, I have been granted access to various texts as time went by, so of course I can see more. I guess you are probably able to see, we'll go back to anonymous here. Okay, you should be able to see this. Are you able to see this? This text of the, let me see, it's in the, Titika, what can you see on your screen? Oh, no, sorry, it's here in Greek. I will go back to Apocalypsis Ioannou. Okay, the first one. Can you see it?
Yes, normally they can see Apocalypse. Yes, of course.
Okay, so imagine you have now these columns. The first thing I'm gonna ask you to play a little bit with this symbol to open and close the windows, okay? Just in order for you to see what it looks like. It means that you can work with 2 columns or 3 or 4 or as many as you want. It is, you remember, the first originality of TraduXio. You want to see the original version and the version you're working on in Italian, for instance, or Bulgarian, whatever, okay? And close the other ones, you are entitled to do so. You want to close the original version in order to compare better the English translation and the Italian one, you can do it. You want to open the Latin one because you know Latin better? Fine. You want to see everything? Fine also. Okay? So play around this. Just this is the basic functionality. It means the translation goes from one language to as many as you want. Okay? So I guess it's easier to understand this. So we'll move now to the next step, is you want to add another column. Suppose you want to do this. You will go here on the right-hand side on top and click on the plus symbol. When I click on the plus, there appear here a small window for metadata. So the author of the translation will be me, okay, for instance, and I would translate into, suppose I'm really good at Bambara, okay, the Malian language, and I want to create another column for my Bambara version, okay, and it appears. Please try to do the same procedure in order to see whether you're able to create a new column.
And they can also put the title of the text, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. I just want to go step by step. I'm not able to see. Yeah, there it is. The commentaries. Okay, so everyone is able to do it. So once you have created your extra column, you may want to introduce the title here. So suppose the name in Bambara for Revelation would be Bulgur, don't say, okay? That would be the name. And then you switch. All those metadatas are important for the classification of your text, but you can modify them at any time, okay? Here, you're in the writing position. If you want to switch to reading position, you click on read, okay? And you click on edit in case you want to be able to write again, okay? When you click on read, you basically freeze it and impedes any modification of your text, okay? When you're in the edit mode, you will be able to have access to the small boxes here where you can translate the different parts of the text, okay? And it will appear in a specific color. This is what I'm doing now. Yes, everyone can see it. Okay. Now, my color is pink. Suppose we collaborate together and you would be writing on the second block. Your color would be different so that I could see that someone else is working on the second block. Okay. So I will go on my second block and I can do my translation here. Third one, and so on. Okay, that's it, basically. Who does the job is the machine is not here to substitute itself to the translator, but it's here to assist the translator. Okay. And obviously, as you can see immediately, because there are many columns, you clearly see how nice it is to collaborate with other colleagues over a translation. Like, you do this language, I'll do the other one, or you do this block, I do the other one, and so on. Okay, you can organize. So can everybody do that for the moment?
Είμαστε εντάξει, υπάρχει κάποιο πρόβλημα? Μπορείτε όλοι να δημιουργήσετε στήλη, να γράψετε?
I understood this, Titika. Problema. Okay.
Okay.
I won't get into details, but you can see here small arrows. Okay, don't touch them for the moment. It's meant to unify the blocks if you want to. Okay, so I'll just show you quickly, but I don't suggest you do it because it's extra. You can unify it and you can break them. Okay, if you're not satisfied. Well, I mentioned rapidly the technical originality of TraduXio. Basically, without entering into details, this is the originality. Whatever the segmentation chosen, it will always fit with the other versions on the other columns. Okay, if you have here one block and here one block, okay, so you have 3 blocks here, 1, 2, 3, and you have only 1 here. Still, there will be a correspondence between this version and this version. I won't enter into details, but this is where the technical difficulty lies. And this is why we're speaking of a text base and not a database. Okay, so enough with this technical part. We're not here for this, but it's an interesting device that I'll show you later. So basically, I will suppose that you've been doing this translation in every block. So you're done with this translation. Okay, you did this translation in all the block and so on. And now what you want to do is basically you want to protect your creation, right? You want to protect it. So you want to click on this symbol here, which will lead you to the choice of your license. By default, it's going to be a copyright. But if I click on it, as you can see, okay, I can modify it and I can choose an open license of the Creative Commons type. For instance, will I authorize the modification of my work? Suppose I want to say yes, but under certain conditions. Do I authorize commercial uses? No, because I'm an academic. Okay, so basically I don't want people to sell my translation, but I authorize colleagues to improve it if they judge it, if they sense it's necessary. So I'm opening it. And once I've chosen this, I can basically select, and as you will see, the symbol here appears. So here is my work. Okay, it's been tagged, it's been protected by the license I chose. And it's invisible, okay, for the time being. The license is one thing, the access is another thing. Now I want to choose who will be able to read my work. So I'm going to click on edit and I'm going to choose here public or shared or private. Suppose I want to make it public, everyone will be able to see it. If Google is going to come up in the results of the search engines and so on. But you want to work together with other people. So you're going to choose share here, partager in French, and then manage how to share it. So you click here and then appears a small box here, and you will basically be able to invite other people by their login. Chichika, what is your name? What is your login?
I'm not logged in. I just watched your presentation, but my name is Xanthipi.Dimitroulia.
Xanthipi. Okay.
Okay.
So I can immediately identify this user. I'm going to add it. Okay. Share, and it appears here. Okay. So I could for instance, add, no, she's called another colleague of mine, Pascal Elvaz, for instance, and she would appear. So I'm this way authorizing other people to have access to my translation. Okay, I can close it. And if I want to, I have to repeat the same operation with the original version. Here, I don't have access to it, but because I did not create the text, but we'll do the exercise by with a text that you create, and you will be able to do it. Okay, you have to grant access to both the original version and the translation if you want the people to be able to see it. Is this clear for everyone? Are there problems? Are there questions?
No, it seems to be very clear for the moment.
It's quite intuitive, actually. Okay, now suppose I'm not satisfied at all with this Bambara translation, and I want to cancel it. There's the letter symbol here on the left side of my column. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to ask me to confirm, do you want to cancel this translation? And I'll say yes. And it will disappear. Okay? Is it clear for everyone? Okay. So I want you to go back to works here, œuvre, okay, on the left hand side of the interface. Click on work, and then you will go here on the right side, add a work. Okay, add a work. Add a new work. So you will click on this, and we will now switch to the second exercise, which will be to insert a new text. So far, we've seen how to add a translation to a text already existing, but what you will probably want to be able to do is to add your own text and create your translation. So here, this is what I will do. I will insert a text called La vie est belle, for instance, a famous text written by I don't know, let's say Victor Hugo. Of course, this is totally imagined. Okay, it's from year 1845, suppose, and then I can register these metadatas. What will happen then? I click, then appears a small version, a small window here with my title, the name of the author, the date, okay? And it suggests me to copy my original text here, okay? So this is one of the limits and one of the assets of TraduXio. You will have to copy paste. You won't suck in the text automatically, like the Google Toolkit allowed you to, for instance. There is no device to import a file. You have to do it manually. I'll show you why it's important, why it's not only a limit, but an asset as well. Suppose I take a okay, so we're going to football tonight. And basically, this is going to be my text. Okay, I'm selecting this text. And I want to copy paste it. Here it is. It's important to notice, okay, as was said in the message, that every time that you divide the text, there will appear a separation between two blocks, okay? When you leave a line here, or here, or here, as opposed to doing this, a reunion, okay? So suppose I continue my text by adding, for instance, this is going to be one block, but this is going to be another block, this, another block, this, another block, and so on, okay? Clear for everyone? Then you go to validate, you click on read here. And it melts into your original version with a separation that you have made manually, a segmentation that was made by you. Why is it important? Because as opposed to all the interface that do a automatic segmentation is based on natural language processing, that is the sentence. TraduXio offers you to do the segmentation the way you want. So if you work on Sonnet, it makes a lot of sense to do your segmentation by the group of 4 verses or the group of 3 verses, tercets and quatrains. Okay, if you have a poetry by Cavafy which has a different form, maybe it's important to do your segmentation by paragraph, the way he does it. Okay, the segmentation by sentence is too rigid. So here enters the flexibility of TraduXio. You can have your own segmentation. Of course, you have to do it manually, but then the segmentation is very important because the blocks that you create are those that will appear as results in the concordance when you will mobilize, browse for the concordance. Okay, these blocks are going to appear. Okay, so if you work on poetry with groups of 3 verses and 4 verses, for instance, you will get that kind of results and not result by sentence, which wouldn't make any sense. Okay, good. Now you will go on the plus version, on the symbol on the right hand side, and you will create the translation the way you already know how to do it. Okay, you will be the author and you will choose the language. So suppose I want to improve my Greek. There is no Greek. I don't know. I can't find the Greek.
Maybe it is EL.
Ah, IL. H-I-L.
Non, EL, je veux dire.
Ah, L là.
L.
It's the name. Yes, it's the name of the language in its language, of course. Okay, and I create my Greek version. Of course, I'm not really good, so I'm going to invite here Titika to help me. Okay, so Xantipi is invited, and I will also invite Titika to see the original version. Otherwise, she won't have access. Now, Titika, can you confirm that you have access to the text I inserted, La vie est belle, and its translation into Greek?
There is a question concerning the Greek. If you see the chat, is there any distinction between ancient Greek and modern Greek?
At the time we inserted this small computer module about the language, I'm not sure it existed, but you can find some that will make the difference, yes. This is a point that we haven't, a difficulty that we haven't yet come across. I forgot to mention that the way we developed our project is by addressing difficulties that people come across. So when a group of people using TraduXio mentions us a specific need, we try to find a solution. Otherwise, we wait for the difficulty to appear. Okay, so it's a good point, this difference between ancient and recent Greek. I'm not sure we can do the difference here. Is there a huge difference in the alphabet or the possibilities of what you can write by using your keyboard?
In fact, the alphabet, no, it's not a problem. The accents are completely different, but I'm not sure that if we copy-paste ancient Greek, perhaps we should try it. Maybe it can recognize it as UTF-8.
Yeah, incidentally, you will see that this module, this computer module about language, by default, they consider that there is no variation within the language. So it doesn't make sense to, unless you have a major variation like American English or English or Australian English, that kind of stuff. But it does not consider, even in Spanish, they won't introduce differences between Spain Spanish and Colombian Spanish, for instance. So this is one of the limits of considering that the language is one unified block. Of course, the Greek language shows it clearly. We would have the same aspect for the Asian languages, like I mentioned earlier, between Korean language of the 16th century, very close to Chinese, and modern Korean language. I'm not sure it's quite equivalent to ancient Greek and modern Greek, but it looks like it's a bit of the same difficulty.
But there is still the possibility to add some languages, isn't it? I mean, even if they are diachronic variations.
Yeah, I'm quite sure. If not, you would then add a tag to differentiate it. But I'm going to ask Aurélien, who's very has a very friendly feeling about Greece, so he'll be quite interested to answer this question. He speaks modern Greek because he lived in Athens.
Thank you.
So once you did this, then I can work with Chichika to translate. So Chichika, please, can you see this page?
No, I'm not logged in. I just watched.
So imagine here, Chichika would work with me. I would tell her, for instance, to work on the second block, and if she were to work there, that block would appear not in the pink color like it is now, but say in the green color. So I would see while working here that Chichika would be working on the second one, and a third person would have another different color. So people, there are no difficulties to distribute, to work together, provided everyone works in a different block. Okay, the limit of the system is when many people work at the same time inside the same block. As you have noticed, you don't need to save the work you've done. It's been done immediately. But the machine is still a bit confused when many people work in the same block because it doesn't know which modification it should immediately save. Okay, this is why the only bugs, problems that you will have is when many people or two people, beginning with two people, work in the same block. For instance, you work with me on this block, you do a modification while I'm doing mine, and then you have the unpleasant surprise to see that you lost your work. So don't do it, okay? Because it's quite unpleasant. So you've just seen the brown color. I guess this was Chichika or someone else, but I can also invite you, if you give me your your login in this chat.
Now I work on your text. I'm okay, I'm logged in, and I translate.
Yeah, I can see that. Where do you translate?
The second.
Okay.
Okay, can you see it?
I can't see it being modified because you're still working on it. Okay.
Okay,
If you go now, I can see it.
Okay.
It alterate. I think everyone could see it. So this way, guys, you can see that I can always know where Chichika is working in order not to interfere with her work. Okay. And I can maybe leave a comment here. For instance, Chichika, help me here with this word. Okay, it would be better if we had like a means of communication to on top of the text. For the moment, we don't have it, so we just leave it in the block, and then Chichika, who collaborates with me over the translation of this text, can maybe help me with my difficulty. Okay. Thanks. So now another device. Your text is fine, but you want to add more text in the original text. Okay. So you want to click here and you're going to add a block. Okay. Suppose you wanted, you did the first chapter or the first page today, and then the next day you want to continue your translation. Don't panic. It's going to be possible to begin with the first pages of the text and then add some more paragraphs of the original text. Like for instance, it's this, and this. Okay, you can always continue your text. Also, you can insert. Insert a block between two existing blocks. So this gives you the flexibility to modify your original version. It's not fixed once and for all, which is quite practical when you do your own segmentation. Again, I hope this is clear. There are no questions.
Can I ask a question? When the researchers from Porto University worked on Shakespeare, they did insert the text manually, or you made a special device for them just to...
No, I think they asked a student to enter it manually.
Ah, okay.
What we did for the symposium in Hong Kong, they asked us to have an importing device because they were working on an easy chair, something like that, for the organization of symposium, and they wanted to aspire automatically the 300 abstracts. So we created this device for them. It's not complicated, but the team was it drew TraduXio a little bit on the side of automatic device, and the team was a bit reluctant to work in that direction. An abstract, as you know, is like what, 3 paragraphs, So they wanted to also have a segmentation by sentence. So they were using TraduXio a little bit as an ordinary CAT tool. Okay, so we're not focusing on this for two reasons. For one, it's not difficult and it already exists. So any kind of engineer could add this device to the TraduXio software. And second, because of financial reasons, we focus on the core of our project, which is the multilingual concordance. All the rest is easy to do, and we have to use our money to do the difficult stuff. Okay, so this is why there are some functionalities that do not exist, that you wish could exist, because you would find it very practical, and we could do it for you, but of course, we would have to find some finance for it. Okay, this is the limit. Again, we've been working on TraduXio for 15 years for less than 70,000 euros, which is nothing. So, Titika, I can read you. Metaten apotukemene epilogue tu media pro to 2018 to Canal Plus. This is as good as I am in modern Greek, I'm afraid. Are there some questions? Okay, so you know already how to create another version. I won't do it here. I'm just going to show the X symbol here is to cancel both your text, the original version, and the translations. Okay, so this symbol of the letter here is only for your translation. The X here cancels everything. So this is why it's going to ask you for confirmation, because it's obviously an important step.
There is a question in the chat, Philippe.
I'm not seeing. To split an already created block, we get to paste after clicking on edit. To split an already created block in the original version, you mean? Like here, you want to split this? Yes, what you will do is basically this. You create a block and you copy paste. This way. That would be the current solution for this, for the time being. How can correspondences between words from different columns be established? Okay, good question. Let me go to this. Suppose I'm here about tremblement de terre. Okay. So if I want to go to, I select this, okay, and it's going to ask me to browse for the concordance. So I click on, okay, let's go browse the concordance about tremblement de terre, earthquake, okay? And another window will open, giving me the results. Okay, tremblement de terre is this in St. John's Apocalypse, for instance. Then I have this in Sens Public, some text. Then I have this part in another text. Those are big chunks, okay? Then some other results from the Apocalypse of St. John. The results that you get depend on the corpus that you, the corpus that you possess, that you build. Okay, one thing here is important. You have access only to certain texts, okay? But all the texts are deposited in one big text base. So you have access to the whole of the text space, even if you don't have access to the text. Suppose that Titika is on the side, created a translation for a text in Hebrew, okay? And she did not grant access to it for you. You would still be able to consult in the concordance her translation. This is linked to the fact that the chunks that appear in the concordance can go public because of what we call the right of short citation. Okay, even a text protected in copyright can be cited, provided it's a small amount. This is the principle, this is the way Google Books work. It can show you a piece of a book, okay, even if the book is protected. The concordance of TraduXio works the same way. So everyone can work on his text, but parts of the texts can be consulted through the translation. And this is where, of course, goes common, where you can increment a certain capital when you work with people. I mentioned earlier the fact that I've been working for 3 years now, or 4 or 5 years, even 3 years, 4 maybe, with my students in Brasilia on French philosophy texts. So now we have a small corpus of texts of the philosophy of the 20th century, and we can consult this, and you can have access to this. So if you look for results in French, for instance, or for certain words, you will come up with results in the concordance that are from Simone Weil, Jean-Paul Sartre, Henri Bergson, Paul Valéry, and so on, because I introduced them, okay? And the more people introduce text in the text base, the richest, of course, the results, and the more necessary it will become to use filters, not to be invaded by results. When we're talking about relevant suggestions, if you don't want to have results about philosophy, you need to protect yourself from it. So in the current version, the actual version of TraduXio, we have not installed the filters. We had it in the first version, but we probably will have to come back to it quite rapidly. Did I answer your question? No, it was about the glossary. So this is about the concordance. Suppose I want to create an entry in the glossary about football professionnel. Okay? It's going to ask me, if I double click on it or select it, it's going to ask me, do you want to add a translation in the glossary? I'll say yes. And we go to this part, football professionnel. I want to translate it in, for instance, what could it be? Bambara again, okay. It's going to be like this. And now it will appear slightly underlined in blue, okay. When you click on it, the translation here will appear. In Bambara, it says this, okay. Now, if you go for results in the concordance, the entry of the glossary is going to appear first. In that case, no. Why is that? Oh, strange. There it is. Okay? Because you fixed the translation once and for all. So it comes up first in the results. Okay? But you could have other results also. Did I answer your question, Maria? Okay, are there other questions? So basically that's it. What I suggest you do now is try to collaborate. You know how to basically create various translation. You know how to consult the concordance, you know how to create an entry in the glossary. now you can collaborate with your colleagues. So I suggest you write here, okay, your login name. For instance, mine is going to be this, okay? And you can invite your colleagues here to play around on your translation. So you can see the real power of collaboration, okay? It's going to, if 3 or 4 or 5 people work together on a text of 3 pages, it goes quite quick. It can be really quick, okay? You can do a translation marathon, or you can leave commentaries, you can discuss, you can criticize, and so on. Okay, so you can invite Titika, who is Xantip, okay, here also. Try to invite one another so that you can see the real potential. Oh, there's one thing I didn't mention. Thanks, Titika. Is where is it? Yeah, you have this printing here below the copyright mention. Okay. Well, I forgot to create a license here. But I showed you how to do it, so it's not going to be complicated. Suppose I want to open everything here. I'm going to create this license. Okay, so it appears here. But below you have printing. Then you can get a sort of clear version of your translation. I'm going to show you here. There you go. Suppose I'm done now, and I want to have a printing version. It's going to appear that way, without the segmentation in block. Okay, so this is what you can copy paste when you want to export your work in a Word document, for instance. We haven't worked yet on the export device in order to get a PDF or a Word document, but it's not difficult. Again, it's something we did not focus on because it's not complicated. So for the time being, it's just copy paste again. Okay, but there it exists, so you don't have to copy paste each block. Think of it. Other questions, maybe? Titika, do you have suggestions?
I see everything was very clear. Okay.
Okay. So you see, we haven't yet any possibility to edit the block. That is to put it in bold character or underline it or insert a footnote with a commentary here on at the bottom for everything that would be paracritics, for instance, for philology. We don't have yet this editing facilities. Again, this is not the complicated stuff, so we did not begin with it. Okay, but it's sometimes it's possible. We are working on the necessities encountered by the users. Okay, suppose a user tell us, okay, I'm not happy with this translation. I need to be able to say to the student something like that, and this commentary should not be in the block, because if it's in the block, it's going to appear in the concordance, and you don't want the commentaries to appear. So we should invent a device to have this comment appear when you put your mouse on say a certain symbol like a star, and then this would appear, the commentary would appear, but it wouldn't be part of the block itself. This we have to invent. Okay, some users came up with this need, and we know we have to do it, but we need, of course, finance in order to be able to do this development. Okay, so again, remember that when you use TraduXio, it's more than a research project because it exists and it works. It's rapid and robust, but it's not yet a service. So it's not perfect. You will come across certain minor difficulties or functionalities. You will regret that some functionalities do not yet exist. You would wish some functionalities to work for you, and so on. We would be, maybe I should finish with this, we would be very happy to work with people who have a project, to be able to accompany them, but provided you accept that the fact that sometimes not everything is the way you want it to be. Okay, we try to solve the difficulties as quickly as possible when they appear, but we basically are looking for a group of people that want to, I wouldn't say test, but because it's already, you can already work with TraduXio, okay, but accept the fact that maybe you will come across difficulties, and it is through the discovery and the identification of these difficulties that we actually make progress on the software. Okay?
So that's it, isn't it?
You told me about 2 hours, but I
And
have some extra time, so you can, if you guys have some more questions, I'll stop here the division of my screen. But if you have some question, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
there is a
Is
question.
there an article, project, case study about how TraduXio has been used in analyzing translation? Not no, the latest publication, you can find some aspects, but here's the link to the one of the latest publication. But if what you mean is like, was this translation okay? Maybe we should improve this aspect. We have this use for the language teacher in Korea. Okay, he evaluates his students because he grades them, and he grades them for the work done inside the class and outside the class for homework. So that would be the closest thing that we would have, something like resembling what you have in mind. I'm not sure, maybe I guessed right what was behind your question, but if you want to be more precise, specific, maybe I can help. But we don't have an article about, hey, I use TraduXio to evaluate the various translation of the Quran, for instance. I did this presentation once. I put one translation of the Quran per century. Okay, so this is quite interesting, because you see the evolution of the perception of the religious text and also of your own language, because it evolved through time, of course. But we don't have like an article about how to use TraduXio for basically the epistemology of translation, something like that, or historical linguistics applied to translation. But it's one thing that you could do, obviously.
Is there any other question or comment or demand?
Okay, so if you want to try TraduXio, you know how to do it. If you have come across a problem, you can always write to me. On the homepage, there is you have a contact option, and basically you send an email that I will receive. Okay, so I can answer this. Otherwise, you just write to this address, and it's the same address. It's where I received the mail from TraduXio. So if you need some, you have complementary queries, or you need some more specific explanation on some aspect, feel free to drop me a line, and I'll answer as soon as possible. Thank you. Can I ask you briefly, what is your field, basically? Because Titika told me that you're from various disciplines, so I guess there are some translators and language teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But are they also some professional translators or people from the technology branch? Or basically, why were you interested in this presentation tonight? Are there some of you, for instance, that are not teachers?
I think that, yes, some people are not teaching, they are translators, maybe.
Okay. One thing we could imagine, if some of you are interested, is to do the localization of the software in Greek, in modern Greek, so that the interface could speak Greek. This is one collaboration that is always possible. It's not so difficult to do, but it's obviously not as funny as translating texts. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you discovered something new, and as I said, it's not absolutely intuitive, but it's not difficult. So through this small presentation, I hope you can connect the dots between the theoretical part and the practical ones. You can see why there can exist a technology for translation that is not based on natural language processing. And this is the most difficult part. It's part of my philosophical job, and to talk to computer scientists, to tell them that technology is not synonymous for automatic technology. You can have a technology for action that is not basically a delegation to the machine. The machine can assist you without being a substitute to your work. At the time that we're living, where everyone is just praising post-edition, I think it's very important to keep this in mind. Not to mention big data, artificial intelligence, deep learning, and that kind of stuff, of course.
So thank you very, very much for your presentation, for the hands-on seminar, and most of all for your project that for TraduXio that we can use in different ways for teaching or translating or collaborating, all that you told us tonight. We hope we will have the opportunity to see you again. I don't know if you can come in person in Thessaloniki, as you are a little, Brazil is not so close, but maybe.
Yeah, for the moment I'm still in Paris, so it's closer to Thessaloniki than Brazil is, of course.
Yes. So thank you very much. Thank you all of you for attending the seminar, the last seminar for this year, and we will be together again in October with new seminars. But still, in July, we'll have our summer school. Please get informed through our site. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, dear participants, and au revoir.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.